This now, the Clancy case, putting this very serious, rare and serious condition in the spotlight. Postpartum psychosis can cause a sudden break from reality, but former prosecutor Josh Ritter points to what Clancy's medical records do not show.
She was talking to several different psychiatrists and telling them everything that she was experiencing: insomnia, anxiety, depression. She kept a journal of what she was doing and the medications that she was taking and how she was feeling. Nowhere in any of this does she ever mention hearing voices telling her to harm the children. And in fact, the only time that she said she had any kind of impulse or intrusive thought about harming the children, the only time that we ever hear that is after the murders have taken place. And she says that that command only took place on that one time.
Fox News senior medical analyst Dr. Marc Siegel joins me now to talk about this. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us. It's a very tough topic. It's been a tough trial, a difficult one to watch. Your thoughts? Josh Ritter sort of laid one of the great points that the prosecution makes in this case, that she didn't claim to have heard a voice, a male voice, loud and commanding, telling her to kill the children and herself, or she doesn't mention these voices until after the act is completed. When we talk about psychosis, postpartum psychosis, it's very rare. We have a chart here kind of showing that. But your thoughts on the timing of this, if that's possible, what are you thinking?
Well, Molly, one of the things that's on trial here is the healthcare system and the doctors that took care of her. Dr. Jennifer Tufts had just recently graduated from Boston University's psychiatry program, and she saw her 14 times in televisits. And expert medical critics are saying, well, why didn't you see her in person? You know, 14 times in televisits, 17 minutes or more. She didn't during any of those, and the prosecution is using Jennifer Tufts as a witness. She didn't during any of those talk about homicidal ideation, show evident signs of psychosis, but you might not show physical signs of psychosis. She did, show despair, hopelessness, severe depression and anxiety. And a lot of psychiatrists have told me that you really need a deep dive to figure out sometimes if somebody is psychotic or not. Philip Resnick is a very powerful witness for the defense because he was involved in the Andrea Yates trial, if you recall, and she got off after drowning her children and is suffering in a mental hospital to this day. But I think that the point that's being portrayed here by the prosecution carries a lot of weight, and I think Josh Ritter is right. If she was psychotic, it appears to have been quite episodic. And there was even a friend who testified yesterday who said she kept telling her she was fine. So if the symptoms were there, they were waxing and waning, and she may not have been admitting them to everyone or to anyone. But we don't know for sure yet. It all rests on what the jury believes and doesn't believe. There's no absolute evidence here one way or the other.
Yeah, a lot of dueling experts, and they'll be untangling a lot of that testimony. And who knows what sort of depth of medical knowledge they have beforehand to kind of listen to all this and take it into account. Go ahead, Doctor.
Molly, one more thing is that Jennifer Tufts, and I'm not trying to target her, but she's not an expert in postpartum psychosis and not an expert in this type of thing, and that is a factor, too, here. A message to the viewers is we need experts in these things, and we don't need doctors that are prescribing a lot of medications and shuttling from one doctor to the next. Yeah. This is a very severe situation.
Yeah, I think you raise an interesting point. It's one the defense has actually put out on the table in this case, that Lindsay Clancy was not just over-medicated, but misdiagnosed by this wide variety of providers, that she had sought help, that she had checked herself into a mental institution and checked herself out. But I think also there's the point of what she told all of these varying experts and medical providers along the way, and that's what they've testified to, that they hadn't been told about voices, that came after the killings when she mentions it, as you mentioned, to this very talented psychiatrist, and that's when that information comes to light. But beforehand, and that there was no quarterback, essentially, dealing with her prior care, the care up until the days of the killings, which may have been part of this challenge, what the defense argues is part of the challenge. So I guess it's up to the jury to decide to what they make of that, and who they believe and how it all comes out.
One final point is, of course, these were precious children whose lives were at stake, and an expert psychiatrist is supposed to be trained at figuring out what someone's hiding, what someone's not telling you, maybe someone that doesn't want to lose control of the kids. You don't know that. So again, this is something where one of the messages here, and this is why you're seeing a lot of anger in the community about this, which is that we need people to understand that pregnancy and after birth, postpartum are very, very difficult periods from a mental health perspective, but postpartum psychosis itself is very rare.
And very real, of course, Dr. Marc Siegel. Thank you. I want to ask one quick question as the jury gets this case this week, as expected, listening to the closing arguments. I mean, this is very tough stuff to listen to. You know, this is a mother accused of murdering 3 young children. The evidence must have been challenging to look at and to take all of that in. Your thoughts just right now on the jury and what they'll be facing and thinking about, as they have been for weeks now, and now about to head behind closed doors to make a big decision.
And they get to look right at the records that all of us are not. We're trying to work through it and go through testimony and figuring it out, but they get to listen to, see the records, look at it straightforward, look at her, you know, sitting there in the courtroom. I think that it's all going to come down to something that Josh Ritter said the same thing. One juror is all it takes to say, I think she was psychotic, and you end up with a hung jury, and then she's going to end up in a psychiatric hospital. That's what I think will happen.
All right. That's a great point. And also it's worth noting for viewers at home, she could be acquitted. If she is acquitted or, as you mentioned, ends up with a hung jury, she would not go free. She would go into an institution for an indeterminate amount of time, and things would go forward from there. As you mentioned, perhaps another trial. If there's an acquittal, she could be in an institution for quite some time, perhaps for the rest of her life. But she would not just go free. But Dr. Marc Siegel, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate your insights. Perhaps we'll hear more as this case comes to its conclusion. Thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.